Welcome to the Sellernomics podcast, sharing valuable tips and information in the Amazon and e-commerce space. Each week, we deliver the best interviews with some of the top Amazon personalities in the industry to help you grow your business. Today's episode is brought to you by Getida, the global leader in FBA auditing and reimbursements. And now, here is your host, Rob Stanley.
Hey everyone, welcome to another great episode of Sellernomics. Got a really good one here for you today. I'm running solo. Lisa's on a trip right now, but got an amazing person here. One of my favorites. Get to see him at trade shows all the time. Let's bring into this studio, Ollie from Trellis. Welcome to the studio, Ollie. How you doing, man?
Good, man. How you doing, Rob? It's
doing
awesome
good
to be here. Awesome to be on the show.
Yeah, great to have you on. Yeah, we've been talking about this for a little bit. So Today we're going to be talking about driving Amazon profits with dynamic pricing and advertising. That's a mouthful, and that's probably a lot to talk about, and we got to squeeze that in here. So let's get started on this and talk about, what impact does price have on Amazon brands?
Yeah, I think it's a good place to start, right? Like to your point, this is a lot to unpack. There's a lot of elements within here as well. But starting with like looking at where price actually hits, like it actually impacts everything, right? Like if you're looking at your ACost, your click-through rates, your conversion rates, how fast you'll be able to turn over your inventory, like your overall volume, sales for that matter, and ultimately your profit as well, right? Like at the end of the day, when we look at how people are pricing their products today, it's oftentimes just this cost plus strategy, right? It's that I'm getting my COGS, excuse me, for about 30%. I'm going to mark it up, and kind of that's the one third, right? One third for overhead, one third for profit. But that doesn't have to be this way, right? And because price does impact so much, thinking about how you approach your price and not keeping it static becomes really important, because things do change all the time, right? And like I know Rob used to be a seller and as well. And how did you look at pricing your products? How did you look at how price impacted for your own bottom line or your P&Ls or anything like that as well?
Yeah, we usually would have to, obviously get our landed cost and factor everything in. If it was a box, if it was, any import fees, things like that, we got it all the way down. And then we kind of had a set of, we wanted to make at least 40% margin. Now, not everything, right? Not everything was 40%, but we had kind of a goal of when we pursued certain products of, okay, we wanted to have at least a 40% margin, because you had to really calculate in all those fees coming in, right? Like storage fees and, Amazon fees and, all kinds of stuff like that. So that's kind of how we did it. But that was a while ago. So
then when you launched your product, right? Like, did you ever change your price after that? Like, was it just, hey, I launched it. Okay. So how frequently do you change your price?
So we were remember, I stopped selling in 2018. So there was some pricing tools back there that would help with some automated pricing. It's probably a lot better now with AI and driven, technology and stuff like that. But we would definitely have a bottom price and a top price, right? And if we run down to the bottom, we still knew where our margin was. We knew this as low as we could go. And if we lost, then we lost it. But, it just depends. But we definitely would adjust prices very often.
And I think that's actually, you're probably one of the anomalies within the seller community here as well, right? Knowing that kind of detail towards your products individually, the unit economics behind it, but also changing your price as frequently as you did. A lot of people don't do that right now, right? But there are about 2.5 million price changes a day on Amazon right now, right? And that's happening. That's only increasing month over month, day over day. And you kind of look at that, you do the math on that, and you do kind of overall year. It's like that's like I say what's the general math there is about 30 price changes a second or something like that.
Oh, it's got to be a lot, yeah,
something like that. But it's what becomes interesting is that most people just keep it static, right? It's like, I've said it, I know this is how much I want to make, and there's not much I'm going to do about it, and then we'll coupon and we'll leverage things as well. But fundamentally, looking at it as a static lever with all the things that it impacts, you start saying, well, should I react, right? Like, we're all familiar with how dynamic price works. We all take Ubers. Like, I'm a big Raptors fan, 2019 NBA champs. I live in Toronto, so I'm 10 minutes away from Air Canada Center, known as Scotiabank Arena now. But I take an Uber to go to games all the time, and it's a different price every game, whether it be by 20 cents, 50 cents, or $1 or $2. It doesn't change much for me. I'm going to go either way. Airlines, same thing, right? And we have so much data available to us on Amazon and through Amazon, that why not leverage that data to be able to inform where we should play in that min max price, right? Exactly what you were doing. That I know my high price where I'll make a lot of profit. I know my lower price where I won't make as much, but I'm comfortable selling at. Why don't we actually look at and figure out how do we, what is the price that we should go in with, and let alone change that price day over day, right? Like
Yeah.
that's there's so much opportunity to do that.
So Ollie, how should sellers go about doing that? Like we had this great conversation talking about it, but what do they do? What's the steps they need to take to be able to put into effect like a dynamic type pricing?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at it's we're going to go back to like basic economics here. We're looking at price elasticity of demand. It sounds much more complex than it actually is, but really it's the relationship of the number of units you'll sell at various different price points, right? So in your example, you had your min max and all the prices in between. Figure out what that is, right? Everyone's changed their price at least once before, and if you haven't, please do, just to see how it changes the data coming in, changes your sales. But look at, go for a 2 week period, or every 10 units you sell will change it. Go up and down 5-10% from the price you're at right now, and figure out how many units you're actually able to sell along that way, right? From there, you actually be able to, everyone's familiar with Excel, but graph that and see that, okay, well, if I sell 100, if I put my price at, let's say $25, I'll sell 100 units. If I put it at $15, I'll sell, 175 units, right? You can actually see these things and play them out, but track it that way to get your price elasticity of demand so that you have more knowledge going into it and making a database decision, right? That if I want to price my product now at 2150, then I'm going to be able to sell X number of units and have a bit of a forecast towards that too, right? So now I'm getting line of sight on profitability. I'm getting line of sight on cash flow. I know the payout that I'm going to get at the end of the day, and I know where I can go with that. And so as a business, when you start thinking about it, saying, well, what is my goal? What do I need to be today? Do I need more cash flow? Do I need more profit? You can start making those price adjustments to go with that, right? To just to see it's like, hey, you know what? I can make more profit here. I'm okay with selling less units. It works out great, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one aspect and one thing to look at. The other one is also, I would say, price sensitivity, right? So profit sensitivity rather. And so it's saying, well, what we have one side, we have the relationship of units to price. On the other side, we have the relationship of what's my profit at various different price points, right? And like there's a lot of fees that are variable, things like that as well. Let's calculate that. Let's figure that out. And we can actually have both those levers there to start giving us a pretty clear picture of where is my optimal price, right?
Yeah,
Like we can
absolutely.
overlay those. Don't sacrifice volume, don't sacrifice profit. What's the middlemost point on those two things, right? And it's not that complex when you think about it. It gets a little cumbersome when you're trying to do that for every single product that you have, and pulling this data day over day. And shameless plug for Trellis here as a result of that as well, because it's like, hey, well, we help you with that. We'll put these models together for you, and track that and do these in a little bit more systematic fashion. But it really starts giving you clarity as to when you want as a business more cash flow, you can see exactly what that means, right? If I want to increase volume, you can know which way that will go for you and how that will impact your profit. If you want to say, I want to increase profitability, you can see which you can go and say, hey, this is the price point that I'll be at, and this is where I want to be. But then again, that becomes the conversation, the question, and doing it often and doing it as much as you possibly can really will help
Yeah.
you in terms of driving your operational goals, your business goals, whether it be profit. And more often than not, we are all looking for more money in our pocket, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
and so it's each side is true. And then you factor in fees too, right? That, well, you know what, I'm running out of inventory. I don't want stock. Well, I can change my price and decrease my demand to see and say I can decrease the number of units that I'll sell to avoid those scenarios, avoid a low inventory fee, right? Or on the other side, avoid the I've got too much, the surcharge fees, right? So like you can start controlling a little bit better and a little bit more in a more informed fashion the ability, rather controlling the fees, right? Controlling the fees that you're going to have to pay as well, right? And so when you start looking at all these variables, and you tell me, Rob, it's like it feels like it's a no-brainer to think about these things, to do
Yeah.
these things. That I don't want to keep paying money to Amazon. Like I want to keep more money in my pocket.
No kidding. Yeah. That's exactly what everybody is looking for, right? When you're selling on Amazon, you need to make maximum profit. I think you brought up a really good point here, regarding dynamic pricing about people being static. And why don't you give us an example and maybe also what kind of profits they saw when they changed from, let's say, a static pricing to a dynamic pricing, and how did that affect their bottom line?
Yeah, I'll give you. So when you start looking at dynamic pricing, and so within our system, we're looking at we're looking at these models, we're looking at historical data, we're looking at your BSR, we're looking at competitors there as well. And everything when you go into dynamic pricing is all about what's the strategy I'm trying to attain. Is it more volume? Is it more margin? Is it clearance? Is it I want to maintain a certain BSR? You start looking at it from that lens. And so when we add the profit part to this and say, I'll give you an example for a brand that was a clearance brand actually. And they wanted to clear out one of their products. They're like, you know what? We have too much inventory of it, way too much. We're not even going to continue carrying it anymore. And more often than not, when people are doing that or saying, I want to get rid of it, they're just like, I'm willing to sell it and just kind of like, put their finger in the air and see which way the wind's blowing and say, I'm willing to sell it for this, like for, in this example, they were willing to sell for 17.25, right? And that was about a $3 or $4 drop on their product, on their average selling price.
Wow.
So at that point, you would just set the price, normal behavior, set the price, static 17.25, wait for it to sell out, right? It's not selling at the velocity you need. You'd probably lower it a little bit more, keep going in that way. When they enrolled that in dynamic pricing and when they told the system that, hey, I want to clear out this product, what the system actually did was saying, well, when we are increasing sales velocity, is there room for us to go up a little bit more in price? Right. And we're seeing that increase in sales velocity. If they're, let's increase it a little bit. If we don't see it, let's bring it back down and play that game. With this specific product, it went from 17.25, it's like a 2-week, 3-week period here, about 17.25 to 18.75. Because when you lower the price, you'll get more sales velocity, and we knew that from the elasticity models. But then it also went up to 18.75 by the end of it. So now they got an extra $1.50 profit and cleared out majority of their inventory at that 18.75 point, right?
Mm.
So it's when we look at that across, they had over 1,000 units, if I recall correctly. But if we look at that across all those numbers there, it's like, hey, you know what? Like that's $1.50 more per unit at like an $18 price point, it's $19 price point. That's substantial,
That
right?
is.
That's over 10%, and that's all money that you were willing to forego beforehand, right? At that 17.25 initial price. So like just that delta there alone, and like there was probably 5 or 6 price changes. So that when the system saw that it was going up, sales velocity was up. It went to about 17.54, 17.75, 18.01, 18.25, and eventually at 18.75, where we saw a lot of the velocity going. And the brand was like, well, maybe I shouldn't discontinue this product. Like there actually is more demand than we thought. We just had it priced wrong,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Right. And so it gives you a little bit more clarity, and you can see direct correlated towards that profit line. And again, they were paying, like they had too much inventory. They were carrying that inventory for too long, right? And you were there for this one too at BDSS, where I was talking about sell-through rate, right? Like looking at your sell-through rate will inform the types of strategies you go after, inform the types of ways that you do it, right? That whether it be if I have and for those that don't know what sell-through rate is, it's looking at how many units you're selling over the inventory that you have on hand over 90 days. You can actually find this in Seller Central. You can click on that, and in your inventory section there, they'll give you a sell-through rate, and that sell-through rate informs a lot too. But it really starts giving you a perspective as to what kind of pricing strategies you should enable, as well as what kind of advertising strategies too, right? So there's one way of, hey, this is how you calculate and look at the data behind your price to inform the price you should go to market with and what the optimal price is, right? But the best price actually changes over time. But with your sell-through rate and knowing that, you can say really clearly where I need to play to optimize against the inventory that I have on hand, as well, and maintain a very clear boundary there to minimize any fees that you're getting on either side of that. If you have too high of a sell-through rate, you're going to pay low inventory fees. If you have too low of a sell-through rate, you're going to pay inventory surcharge fees. So like it starts becoming really, really interesting when you start looking at sell-through rate to help inform what type of dynamic pricing strategy you need to enable for whether it be one product or your entire catalog for that matter too.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you brought up some good points. And, we are talking about dynamic pricing and advertising. And what
Yeah.
I'd like to do is, soon as we come back from a quick commercial break, I'd like to jump over to the advertising part. And again, we got Ollie on from Trellis talking about driving Amazon profits and dynamic pricing and advertising right after this break.
Hey Amazon sellers, be the next Amazon success story with Getida's FBA reimbursement service. We're offering Sellernomics listeners a $400 offer to get started. So make sure to visit Getida.com/Sellernomics and let us help you maximize your Amazon profits today.
Yeah, so be sure to head on over to Getida.com/Sellernomics. Get your $400 in free FBA reimbursements. I got Ollie on from Trellis, and we're talking about driving Amazon profits with dynamic pricing and advertising. We just went through a really extensive information regarding dynamic pricing and a lot of great suggestions coming from you, Ollie. But let's kind of talk a bit more about the relationship between click-through rates and Amazon ads. Let's kind of, and dynamic pricing decisions. This all does kind of come together. And let's kind of jump over to the ad side.
Well, yeah. And so let's look at the two spectrums here, right? At the end of the day, when we look at what drives revenue on Amazon, right? It's really four things. One, it's your price. One, it's your advertising, right? So your placement. The other is your coupons, your promotion, and the other is your content, right? Between those four things, those will have impact across all of it. If you have an A-cost problem, oftentimes it probably isn't your targeting. It's one of the other three variables that are making it not be effective for you, right? And so when you start looking at the correlation, and we'll stick with pricing and advertising here because it's going to be, there's so many different, you can pull all these levers in different ways for different strategies. Looking at your advertising strategies in correlation with your pricing strategies becomes really important, right? And why that's the case is because if I don't have traffic, no matter how much you change your price, no one's seeing it, right? It doesn't make a difference, right? But if I have, too high of a price or a price that's not relative to the category or my competitors, doesn't matter how much I advertise it, I'm never going to get it, right? And really, when the sell-through rate example or that KPI that I gave earlier, looking at that will really help inform the levers of both strategies, right? And that's because there's so many different ways to go about it. But I like to look at that one specifically as a way to say, well, where should I play and how should I play with it, right? So if I have, a poor sell-through rate, and what that would mean that, it's under 1 in the way Amazon calculates it. And then I gave the formula earlier, but again, you can find that within your Seller Central dashboard there too. What that really means is that you have high supply and low demand, right? So if we extrapolate that out, if I have a low sell-through rate, so if I have too much supply and little demand, you start looking at, well, what are the advertising strategies I should go after and what are the pricing strategies that I should do? And really where you're going to say is that, well, when I have high supply and low demand, I'm going to go full funnel targeting, right? I'm going to hit my top of funnel, my mid funnel, my bottom of funnel. I want to get all my long tail keywords, my short tail keywords. I want to build out an entire funnel based approach to start getting in front of more eyeballs, more people with lower intent and higher intent to increase the demand of my product, right? And at that time, you often want to look at, well, what about my price, right? My price, when we look at dynamic pricing in this way, we also want to look at keeping a lower price against the market, against the competitors as well, but one that still is, will it be profitable or break even is there too, but a lower price than you would want to be at, again, because you really want to create that demand. And so to create that demand when you have high supply and low demand is get in front of more people, get more eyeballs, get more impressions, right? Do a full funnel targeting approach, right? Hitting your top funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel, while also keeping a lower price. These two things will start normalizing out then, right? Your demand will go up and your supply will go up. And then you can start pivoting your strategies, right? And so as you keep going then as well, then you start saying, well, in the middle here, when I have kind of this balanced supply and demand, I can really start saying, well, I can raise my price a little bit more. And I can actually turn off some of the advertising I'm doing at top of the funnel and do it and keep it in the middle and keep it in the bottom. So you're going after, on the purchase intent side, people who have a higher intent to buy that product, right? And so you can start seeing that if we look at advertising in a funnel capacity, right, and looking at price as kind of going your lowest, your middle, and your highest price, you're going to start playing these two in an inverse scenario. Full funnel targeting with low supply, with high supply, high demand, and you go with bottom of the funnel targeting when you have high demand, low supply, because lean into the organic. People want your product. People are searching for your product. Don't keep throwing ad dollars at it when you don't need to. But then you can also lean into your price, right? You can also
Yeah.
lean into increasing that price because you know people want your product, right? And so there's the relationship between advertising and pricing can be looked at. And, you know, sell through rate will inform which way you should play, but can really be looked at as where am I on the supply demand? How much market share do I have? How much inventory do I have? And pulling this data together and thinking about, well, you know, where am I? Where do I want to be? And then changing your pricing strategy to support that, whether it be your lowest price or your, you know, your optimal price, which is that intersection, or your highest price, or from an advertising effectiveness standpoint, going with like a full funnel targeting, or just a bottom half targeting, or just a bottom targeting. These two is real. These two things are how you start thinking about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the point of spending money when you're getting organic traffic either way, right?
Exactly. You know, you brought up a good point right there. Let's talk a little bit about external traffic, both paid and organic. How does
Yeah.
that have an effect on your Amazon advertising, or like, is it lowering it because you're bringing it outside? You know, fill us in a little bit on that.
Yeah, like, you know, when you look at external traffic, it's like we saw a lot of people doing external traffic for Prime Day as well, right? And having pretty prominent effects there too. But you can either go with the search that's happening directly on Amazon, or looking at the external traffic that's happening on other channels to help push people into that funnel for you, right? And there's always kind of a compounding effect that ends up happening there. But external traffic will always provide very positive and fruitful results in that way, and we've seen that growing time and time and again. And you tell me, Rob, I feel like we've seen more external traffic conversations in the last
Oh
6
yeah.
months than we ever have before.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
It should
coming
be
up.
part of your everyday now. I mean, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a certain point where CPCs are expensive, getting more and more expensive on Amazon. We're looking at what Amazon calls, like, you know, endemic and non-endemic brands being able to advertise on Amazon. And so those are brands that don't necessarily have a presence on Amazon, but also being able to advertise for the same placement types that we're looking at too. So if it's going more and more expensive, how do I get cheaper traffic to be able to go and feed into that store of mine as well, right? And being able to target people who are on different channels to get into this to my product. So there's a the value of external traffic and how it impacts your existing ads is more about it's looking at other channels and other areas that consumers are playing in to get in front of them to get them to your product as well. So it's there's a lot of value in going outside of Amazon too, let alone other channels for that matter too, right? Going down the Walmart path, seeing if there's a play there for you and your brand as well. But there's some good wins there.
Yeah, you
Absolutely.
know, I would love to dive a little more back into what you're talking about a little bit, but you know, kind of analyzing the advertising, whether it's external or whether it's internal. Like, what kind of effects does that have, and what kind of things can you learn from analyzing the data of your advertising?
Well, it comes down to what, like, there's so much data, right?
Yeah,
There's so much data, right? And so step one, I always talk to brands about is like, what are the KPIs that you're looking at that will matter for your business? That will say, hey, you know what? This is showing me that there's an effectiveness here. And so, for example, how many eyeballs am I getting? What's my impressions, right? And I like to look at it from the full funnel, right? That the impressions, then my click through rate, how many page views or sessions. I like sessions because it shows unique count versus page views is how many times someone came, right? And then getting into the conversion rate and then purchase. But the one aspect that often gets missed is the repeat purchase rate. And how many times are people coming back to your brand to buy, whether it be this product or another product as well? And so looking at your repeat purchase rate, looking at these KPIs that are there. But when you're looking at advertising effectiveness, what are my advertising strategies that I'm doing to go after my top of the funnel? And are those working for me? And looking at, and the way we know is by these KPIs. What are my ones that I'm going at middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, my retargeting, right? If I know my purchase frequency, and, you know, shameless plug again, but we have a whole shopper insights module on our platform to give you all of that repeat purchase data as well. And when I look at all of that information, look at all that data, I can start getting a really clear picture. And so impressions, impressions, click through rate, sessions, conversion rate, and repeat purchase rate. starts giving you a really clear picture as to how your ads are performing and the customers that are coming into that too. And I think one part that people don't miss is what is the lifetime value of a customer that you get, right? And that informs all of it, right? That I'm willing to spend this much to go after a new customer because they will eventually spend this much with me on across my store, across my brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not forget long tail keywords too. There's
Oh,
always,
yeah.
you got to keep a look at those too. Hey,
Yeah.
Ollie, I'd love to jump over a bit more and talk about Trellis. But before I do, I'd love for you to give us any insider information that we missed that maybe our audience should know about. Take it away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that if we look at the kind of the through lines here is that between this organization or relationship between dynamic pricing and advertising, if you start pulling these levers in the right way for your catalog and all of your products, you'll actually start seeing the shifts in profit really nicely, right? That there's no wasted spend while you're also increasing your price, right? Like you're minimizing your spend while increasing your price, you'll have more profit, right? It's all about pulling these strategies together. And as much as we can have these as words and there's always visuals that help support a lot of these things. Like I'm happy to help to talk to anyone about that, go through their data, go through their KPIs, and help inform some of these things too, and what it means to you as a business. Because sometimes that's the hardest part, is that I hear all these things, I should do all these things, price elasticity of demand, that sounds right, I should do that too. Profit, I should do that too. And Rob, you and I come away from conference all the time like, oh my God, that was awesome. But like, how much can people actually implement into their business every day? Right. And so the biggest thing I'll tell anyone, there is a relationship between pricing and advertising. Playing in the pricing game through dynamic pricing is super important. Understanding how advertising gets impacted by your price as well is super important. And your sell-through rate will help inform both those pieces. Again, super important. And those three are the kind of the main takeaways. And I'm happy to help anyone understand that for their own business as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Great transition here. Let's talk a bit about Trellis. Give us a little bit also about how Trellis can help you with dynamic pricing and advertising, and then the other things that Trellis also helps with.
Yeah, so from our standpoint with dynamic pricing, you can enable a lot of these strategies, right? So we have kind of a set of strategies that are built into the platform there, and you can also create your own custom rules around it as well. But from a dynamic pricing standpoint, we're looking at a clearance strategy, optimizing your BSR, looking at a margin or volume strategy there as well. And you can do all of this within the platform, collect all the data, collate all the data, and then the models will actually run through and be based off of that, along with advertising, along with promotional planning, along with product content, shopper insights, digital shelf. Our advertising solution is where we started with the full notion of that we need to support all of the levers that will drive revenue and drive demand for your product on Amazon as well. And so Trellis powers all four of those areas. We're all about the leveraging AI. The way we talk about ourselves is it's all about the strategies you enable, right? So human intuition, AI precision, that's what we're all about. That's what we believe to be true. And we're here to support brands all the way through, brands and agencies for that matter as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And why don't you let everybody know how they where they can go to find out more information and how they can contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. If you do want to book any time with me, you can go to, send me an email, ollie@gotrellis.com. GoTrellis.com as well. We'll have a lot of these pieces there too. And if you want to book time with me directly, GoTrellis.com/Ollie. I'm happy to talk to you about any of these, happy to talk to you about the platform, and happy to just understand the problems that you're facing and the pain points and how we can continue to keep building and solving these for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those that are listening, it's GoTrellis, which is TRELLIS.com, GoTrellis.com. And you can reach out to Ollie at ali@GoTrellis.com. Some great information you just brought in today. I'm glad we were able to get you on. We talked about this a couple months ago and absolutely brought some great information. You guys reach out to GoTrellis.com or reach out to Ollie if you have more questions. They definitely can help you out with not only dynamic pricing, advertising, but a lot more. Get on and get a free call with them and, see how they can help you guys out.
You got it.
Ollie,
Rob,
great having you on, man. Yeah, for sure.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always fun talking to you. I'm glad to your point. I'm glad we're able to make it work.
Yeah. Great having you on. Yeah. And so guys, be sure to hit that like and that thumbs up, and we'll definitely see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Sellernomics podcast. Special thanks to our sponsor, Getida. Did you know that Amazon probably owes you money for FBA reimbursements? Get $400 in free FBA reimbursements at Getida.com/Sellernomics. Be sure to join us again next week for more great tips on how to grow your business. And thanks again for listening.